Hey everybody, today I'm going to share a little bit about the reading mini lesson framework that I use when I've been writing my reading units. And I'm just going to share a little bit about each piece. I'm making this video because I plan to share a reading mini lesson idea weekly on social media. And so this will be a great video if you want to learn a little bit more about the different pieces. Aside from the mini lesson that I'm sharing, that you can come back to and just learn a little bit about what are these different pieces all about. So the very beginning of the reading mini lesson is going to be the Minilesson Statement. So that's going to be phrased of what readers do for that day. What is that very specific focus that you're going to be teaching to? It should be a reading skill that readers can apply again and again and think about as they're reading not just the book they're reading today, but a book that they read in the future as well. Next up is the teaching point. So whatever mini lesson statement it is for that day, the teacher would just give a little intro to the thinking that readers are going to have to do. Next up is either an anchor chart or a reference sheet. So maybe together as a class, you are co-constructing an anchor chart. Otherwise, you might do something where you have a reference sheet that's ready to go that students can clip into a 3-ring binder or glue into a reader's notebook or something like that. And last up, I have a student connection, and this is just a question that's going to activate students' background knowledge and get them connected to the mini lesson for that day. Next up is this piece that I just started adding in this year, but I love it, oral reading fluency. It's really important that we continue to, with our middle schoolers, to develop their oral reading fluency and give them a chance to read aloud in a non-threatening environment. This is something that I believe they should practice daily or a couple times a week. So with the oral reading fluency, it takes about 2 to 3 minutes once you have the routines established, but students get with a reading partner and they take out their book that they are doing for the reading mini lessons and they look back to the last 5 pages that they've already read and select 1 page to read aloud for that day. So they take turns with their partner reading aloud. And we really stress to students that oral reading fluency isn't about how fast you read, it's about those different dimensions of fluency. So for example, I'm just going to share what those are really quick. So reading with expression when reading dialogue, monitoring and going back when you make a mistake to come back and correct it, phrasing words in a meaningful way that shows that they're understanding the author's meaning, pausing appropriately for punctuation like commas and periods, using word-solving strategies to pronounce difficult words, accurately reading the exact words on the page without taking words out, putting words in, changing the words, reading at an appropriate rate for the genre, and then reading with intonation that expresses the author's voice. So when we're talking about fluency, I love having my students pick one of those dimensions of fluency and ask their partner for feedback, like how did I do at stopping for periods and commas today and pausing appropriately for those, and giving feedback on one of those dimensions. So this has been a great addition to that reading mini lesson framework that I'm loving and I think is really important. Next up is interactive read aloud. So this is where the teacher is reading a book aloud to students. This is the first phase of modeling within the reading mini lesson. So you're intentionally modeling whatever the reading mini lesson is that day through your reading in the interactive read aloud. Interactive read aloud, depending on how much time you have in your literacy block, could last anywhere from like 10 to 20 minutes. So I love having a before reading question to get students connected into the book and also the reading mini lesson. And then some intentional stopping points for during the reading. No more than 2 to 3. We don't want to kill the text. We don't want to be stopping and asking questions every 2 seconds. But we do want to intentionally stop and be practicing whatever that reading mini lesson is for the day during the interactive read aloud. And then after the reading, having a follow-up question that students can maybe discuss in partners or quickly as a whole group. Modeling. So for the modeling, this is where whatever this formative assessment down in the application is going to be, this is where the teacher is going to model what that thinking looks like from the interactive read aloud or from a book in the genre that students are reading. So actually showing students, this is what it would look like. This is what a really strong example of meeting proficiency would be. Next up is the have a go. And this is, if you're thinking about the gradual release of responsibility, this would be where students are now going to get a chance to try it out themselves in a partner situation sometimes, or even just sometimes independently with some guided teacher feedback. So this might be taking a first step to get ready for that formative assessment, just sharing their thinking out so that they can verbalize it before they have to write it down. It can look at a lot of different ways, but this is that important step to make students comfortable for what comes next, the application. The application, I love to include some sort of a formative assessment. It doesn't have to be anything crazy that's going to take students a long time to do, but I think that as a teacher, it's important that students are practicing whatever that reading mini lesson is for that day in some way, and getting a chance to get some feedback on it from me and even from themselves or from their peers. So every single one of the reading mini lessons that I write and that I've included in my reading units comes with a formative assessment, and it comes with a proficiency rubric, so students can easily self-assess, partner assess, or if you choose to assess it as the teacher, you can also assess it that way as well. This is also the time, the application, independent reading, where students are reading the book, practicing that reading skill, and just getting time to enjoy text. We can't expect students to be readers if we don't give them time to read. So this is one of the most important pieces of the reading mini lesson framework. And then also during that application, as students are having that formative assessment, they're having that independent reading time, that's the perfect time as a teacher to step away from the whole class instruction and be able to work one-on-one with students in reading conferences, or to work with small groups of students in an instructional context like guided reading, literature circles, or reading strategy groups. In my reading units, I have ideas and resources for reading conferences and the small group instruction for guided reading, literature circles, and reading strategy groups. For every single mini lesson, I came up with 5 to 7 really intentional questions that you could ask in a reading strategy group or in reading conferences that connect back to that mini lesson for that day, and really will give you a sense as a teacher of how your students are understanding that mini lesson and if they're able to apply it to their independent reading. The last piece of the reading mini lesson is the share. So taking the last 2 to 3 minutes of class to bring students all back together and have a share out question that connects back to that reading mini lesson. And that could be in partners, that could be writing it down on a Post-it note, could be sharing it out as a whole group. I love a symphony share where we just get in a quick circle and we just whip around the circle and each student shares something out really quickly. So those are all ideas, and this is what a full reading mini lesson framework looks like, and the different pieces that I prepared for all 20 mini lessons included in each reading unit. So I can't wait to start sharing reading mini lesson ideas with you, and just please let me know if you have any questions or wondering how this all works together, or maybe a specific question about a certain piece of the framework. Thanks so much for tuning in.